Yeah.
All right, this is the Senate Transportation Committee. It's Tuesday, March 12th. We're here with our counselors to go over this House's version of the transportation bill. We started last week, I think. Can't remember how far, what page we got to.
I believe that we were just about to begin section 10, which is on page 20, line 17. And this is Donna Russo, Savage Legislative Council.
Section 10.
So sections 10 and 11, which begins on the next page, page 21 at the bottom of the page, both of these change the methodology to perform the inflationary calculation for transfers to the Central Garage Fund and appropriations for town highway funds. And if you have questions about the math of it, Logan is here and can help with that part of it.
Would you consider it like updating, or is it a substantial change on how it's calculated?
So, Logan Moving, joint fiscal office. There's no change. This is just essentially making it clear within the statute. It's not actually changing how the formulas are calculated or like what the end calculation would be. It's just making sure that if you were to read the formula or the statute, the law, you'd be able to come to the same formula as everyone else who's also reading it. There was a little bit of confusion with the old wording, so this is just kind of updating that. But no change to like what the formula is,
Which is the CPUI.
Yeah, or the comparison between the prior two fiscal year appropriations. And I did give a presentation on how town highway is calculated. If there is interest, I can also do that in this committee. But no real change with this one.
And that's whatever is the greater or
lesser of the two, yeah. Whichever one's smaller. And if it's zero or a negative, change the appropriation is level funded.
Next is section 12, which it begins on page 23 at the very top, but the change is at the bottom of page 23 with the new subsection C. And this is an amendment to 19 VSA 1112, which impose fees for some permits that are issued for the use of state or town highway rights of way. And specifically what this would do is it would permit the secretary, it wouldn't require, it would permit the secretary to waive the collection of the permit fee for a minor commercial development if the governor has declared a state of an emergency and the secretary has determined that the applicant is facing financial hardship. And there are requirements about when the applicant would need to apply for that waiver.
And the 111 permit is just any work in the right of way.
I believe so, yes.
What page are we on?
I'm sorry. We began with section 12, which is at the top of page 23, but then the actual change is at the bottom.
I was wondering why my page 12 was just not.
Section.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize.
So the next several sections are about various vehicle incentive programs. Section 13 is the Replace Your Ride program. Section 13, which is page 24, beginning on line 7. And it amends existing statute. The statute provides financial incentives to qualifying individuals under the Replace Your Ride program. And the current law requires that an eligible older low efficiency vehicle, and that's the term older low efficiency vehicle, removed from operation in order to get the incentive to be replaced, must have passed the annual inspection in the prior year. This would change it so that it would need to have passed the safety portions of the annual inspection within the prior year, but not necessarily the emissions or onboard diagnostic system checks.
What does that mean? So, but if you don't pass the emissions, you don't get an inspection sticker. So they're saying like you could say you passed the safety, but not the emissions portion?
Correct.
How would they know? I guess they'd have a piece of paper that said they failed one, but not the other.
Yes, I believe so.
Oh,
Or is this for the vehicle they're returning?
This is the vehicle that they're turning in, exactly.
So we don't.
Exactly.
I see.
I was worried as well.
Right, okay.
Sorry, that wasn't clear. So the, section 14 is flexibility for emergencies with the replacement, replace your ride program. This is, pages 24, beginning on line 14 and 25. It would add a new statutory section to Title 19 in order to permit the agency to waive or modify some of the eligibility requirements for the Replace Your Ride program. Specifically, and this is subdivision 1, which is at the top of page 25. When a Vermont motor vehicle has been damaged or totaled due to an event underlying a state of emergency. And if you go to subdivisions 3A and B, which are page 25, lines 7 through 13, the waiver would be permitted only if the applicant shows that the applicant was the registered owner of the damaged vehicle, both at the time of the event and for 6 months after the end of the state of emergency.
So what does this do? Is this what we did, Michelle, after the flood? But this doesn't retroactively make that approved because the effective dates are not. Like if
Yes,
you go back to the flood in July or something.
for the record, Michelle Boomhauer, Vermont Agency of Transportation. Senator, that's correct. This is forward-looking, and it would basically put in place the framework that we use to address a number of vehicles during the flood emergency.
But we didn't feel like we had to like retroactively approve that. I thought at one point we talked about.
I just don't remember, did we do? We didn't do that during budget adjustment. We talked about whether we needed to retroactively approve that, and we certainly would be happy to entertain and work with Ledge Council on language that would do just that thing. I think that would be appropriate.
Was this section 14 something that the agency brought to
Yes,
the legislature?
in light of what we experienced this past summer.
Well, all we would need to do is put an effective date that was effective July 15th.
Yeah, what I can do is confirm with Patrick Murphy that this is sort of the actual thing that we did and nothing beyond this. And then I think you're right that we can make that a retroactive effective date.
I seem to remember Anthea suggesting that we do that, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Shall we go on or do you?
Yeah, I think that's.
So section 15 begins at the bottom of page 25, but the substance is on page 26. There was a session law that was enacted last year that provides $2,500 purchase and lease incentives for a variety of electric fleet vehicles. And currently, one type of those vehicles would be electric bicycles and electric cargo bicycles, but only if the MSRP is $6,000 or less, and this would change it to be for, oopsie, am I on the wrong one?
On page 26, it's just switch it to 10,000.
See page, I'm sorry, I was losing where I was, I'm sorry. So it would be on page 26, lines 11 and 12, that $2,500 would be, the incentive would be provided for electric bicycles and electric cargo bicycles if the MSRP was 10,000 or less instead of 6,000 or less. And then also it would add electric all-terrain vehicles with a base MSRP of 50,000 or less.
What's going to be the standard for electric bicycle for safety?
Senator Mazza, this is Michelle Boomhauer.
Yeah.
So we have been working on a comprehensive safety approach for bicycles and pedestrians.
Yeah.
That I think Kevin Marshy may have come in and talked about that a few weeks ago. And we're looking to other states who have implemented updated standards, and we will be coming back next year with proposed language to address the safety related to those electric bicycles in particular, but all bicycle and pedestrian activities.
But right now, can they ride in the line of traffic? Are they legally in traffic or on the bike lane? Or, I mean, there's nothing, no standards at all, is there?
They would have the same standards as human-powered bicycles. So they basically have to follow the rules of the road, just like regular cyclists do. So regular cyclists can ride with traffic and on the edge, you know, depending on where they are. Like in a city, you might see somebody in a bicycle get right in your lane to take a left-hand turn. That's allowed on electric bikes also.
So there's no registration or standard of what they have to abide by about, can they go right in front of a car? Or can they still have to ride the bike lane, or how does that work?
So
I suspect there's going to be more accidents now that electric bikes, and that's what worries me. I don't know how we're going to enforce that.
yeah, I think you make a really good point in that I think more people are taking up cycling than might otherwise have, because they can manage to bike with an electric bicycle versus maybe they couldn't with a non-electric. And so there will be more bikes on the road. And I believe the driver education that younger people get includes understanding of bicycle and pedestrian safety measures that have to be taken. But the electric bikes are treated right now the same as regular bicycles on the road. And so we'll be bringing back some clarification on all of these elements during the next session.
So there's no standard age or anything to have an electric bike you can ride then.
No specific age limitations at this point.
We did pass that law a couple years ago that Senator Chittenden,
Oh, that's right.
that had the classifications, the class 1, class 2, class 3.
Yeah.
And so there is regulations around how fast they can go. So if you get over a certain level, then it's really a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
Which does allow municipalities to make it easier for them to set clear restrictions on these class 3 motor e-bikes, so that if they don't want to allow those on their rec paths, now it's clear across communities what they can restrict.
But I have seen some bike paths talk about some electric bikes not being allowed.
That comes up related to rail trails also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, section 16 is on page 27. And last year you enacted session law regarding e-bike incentive program, and it required an annual report addressing the incentives for the bikes. This section 16 would, in addition, require a description of the agency's post-voucher sampling audits and the findings of those audits and any recommendations regarding ways to change the program so that it gets to the people with the most financial need.
Is that self-certification of income?
Correct.
Into?
But then there's a sampling, there's some auditing that's done as well of a sampling of the self certification.
So that report was already done. I see.
So yeah, this is an ongoing report, and I think the House wanted more specificity relative to the audit details.
Right.
We have established a relationship with the tax department whereby we are able to send them sort of the specific criteria that were required for the program and what the certification level was that the applicant provided us. And then the tax department can then indicate yes or no, they passed, that was verified as actual or within the realm of the.
If they're eligible or not eligible.
Yeah, exactly.
They're willing to do that.
They're willing to do that for us. So we use that both for for all these incentive programs that require self-certification. So there's for electric vehicle incentives, e-bike incentives.
You only do it for 10% or something?
Yeah, I don't know what the specific percentage is, but it's it's a small sample that, then,
So far you haven't reported on the results of this.
right, because we're still,
And was there a report just on the overall electric
yes.
cycle? In
Yeah.
January? Okay.
I have a constituent that was trying to get one of these e-bike incentives and was very frustrated that it was restricted to only being resellers in Vermont, and he effectively could have gotten a bike for like, I don't know, $400 online, but he had to buy it through a Vermont retailer, and it was effectively $700, so it would have come out more expensive if it was the same bike. Are we gonna look at, I don't know if the agency has any feedback on the first year or so of the restrictions we have or the mandates as to how they can purchase these vehicles, but that's one thing that was in my inbox.
It doesn't have to be a Vermont retailer, but the retailer has to sign up to be a participant, is my understanding.
I think
So
you're correct.
only in-state people have signed up. The first year we did it anybody, but then a lot of the local shops are saying nobody was coming in to get theirs because you could just all do it online. So then we said, well, you sign up to be a participant in the program. And then only the local shop signed up to be participants because it's harder for Costco to think about signing up.
Like Amazon, can Amazon sign up?
They could sign up, or a seller on Amazon, you can sign up, but you have to get them to sign up, so that's my understanding. You require them to kind of participate in the program.
So section 17 begins on 28, but the change is actually on page 29. This is a existing reporting analysis and reporting requirement regarding all of the vehicle incentive programs. And it would add the requirement that recommendations for how to better conduct marketing and outreach be included in the report as well.
They don't want the report to go to finance. They want you to see it twice, I guess.
Which section are we on again?
We were on 17, which
Page 28, they struck out Committee on Finance and put natural resources in.
28, line 9.
Yeah, we don't want to see it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Section 18 relates back in part to the earlier section 6, I believe it was, that transfers money to the e-bike incentive program for fiscal year 25. This recognizes that, based on testimony, that the e-bike incentive program is either out of money or soon will be out of money for fiscal year 24. So page 29, line 12, first it says that during fiscal year 24, the Secretary of Transportation has the authority to, is not required to, transfer up to $50,000 from any of the vehicle incentive programs to the e-bike incentive program for the rest of the fiscal year. But then B says that this is just intended to be advanced funding for the e-bike program, so that if, excuse me, if the secretary does advance any of that money, transfer any of that money from one of the vehicle incentive programs to the e-bike program, it has to backfill that amount when the fiscal year 25 appropriation is made to the e-bike program.
I asked a question.
Yeah, shouldn't.
So I'm not seeing clearly in here, and maybe it's in the books, but do we have an idea of how much we are spending in total in T-bill monies for these e-bike incentives? Like, what is the total amount looking at for next year?
So the monies being spent on the incentive programs are general fund monies, I believe, in total. I'd have to verify that with Patrick. I don't know if Logan knows off the top of his head. We can get you a breakdown. We're gonna have an updated breakdown, hopefully by the end of today, of all of the different incentive programs and what their distributions have been. What you're looking for?
Yeah, it's like $500,000, is it 50,000?
Oh, on e-bikes?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's much smaller. It's, the total e-bike investments have been, I think, 150,000 last year. And there was nothing in the Budget Adjustment Act this year. So they're, looking to up it a little bit with what's in the T-bill now to 250,000, but.
To add 50,000 to.
Well, earlier in the bill, I think, wasn't there?
Section 6 which is on page, yes, 10, it's 140,000 for the e-bike incentives, but that would be reduced by any that is transferred in the fiscal year 24 funds under this section.
Wasn't there a 50,000? Is that a $50,000? Oh, that's just they can do up to 50,000.
They can transfer, yeah, as an advance.
I'll just say as one senator on this committee and somebody that's been looking at a lot of voters in the eyes about our needs to not necessarily raise taxes, but to cut spending. This is an area where if we need to find more money for public transportation or somewhere else, I am supportive of reconsidering our e-bike initiatives, because I just see this more as a want and not a need. And I think people that want to buy e-bikes can afford them. And I don't think this is necessarily helping those that need the resources well enough to be able to get around to and from work throughout the year. So I'm happy to revisit this if we're trying to find monies in the budget, but I am not necessarily of the mind that the e-bike program needs to continue to take T-fund or general fund dollars.
I would jump in on that bandwagon as well. I think that for this program is going to people who just want an e-bike, not going to use an e-bike. And I'm not in an area where we have a lot of transportation being done by e-bikes, but even when I go into the areas, I don't see a lot of transportation being done by e-bikes. So I would be with that process if we come down to that.
It is an income eligible, like it's only for a certain income.
Yeah, it's an income restricted program. There was no funding put in the governor's recommend for this.
It is transportation fund money.
In this case, it would be.
Yeah. Is there existing money now that's there? But it's getting low, so they want.
It's getting low, so this is where they want to, I think there might be 33,000 left. This is where they wanted to make sure the program didn't expire in terms of resources available before the new monies kicked in if they were included in the T-bill as passed.
Okay. Well, we'll flag that one. Any more discussion? Okay, so that takes us to 19.
So yeah, section 19, which is page 30, line 9. This would allow in fiscal year 2025 the secretary to transfer monies among the different vehicle incentive programs.
Which is just replace your ride and that's straight.
Correct, not the e-bike, it's the ones that are in statute.
There's just two of them, or I guess you would just include the fleet.
The fleet as well.
No, I don't think the fleet has been codified in statute yet.
Okay.
I think it's just the new EV incentive program, the Mileage Smart program, and the Replace Your Ride program, those three.
Is that something that the agency asked for, or just?
I'm trying to remember. I think this was a recommendation by our team due to the fact that, where the Mileage Smart program had a significant uptake in the past 8 months, I would say. And so we're anticipating the Mileage Smart program could run out of resources before the other two.
Well, we did make that change in the BAA.
In the BAA, but even so, we know that sort of the bridge to what will happen next, hopefully, is the EPA carbon reduction grant program that the Department of Environmental Conservation is applying for.
Right.
Or ANR, I should say, Climate Office. And so there will be a significant amount of funding for incentives placed in that grant application. And so we are hoping that we will be awarded a grant that will sort of provide the phase 2 funding beyond what the initial legislative funding has been for these programs. Simply.
So that there wouldn't be a gap.
Yeah, we're trying to prevent a gap from occurring, anticipating that we will receive some sort of award. So therefore, we're not asking for any more incentive funds, but we also recognize we're trying to piecemeal and keep all programs moving forward until that eventual funding may occur.
Okay. Section 20, which begins on page 31 and continues through page 33. Page 31 on line 8, you'll see that it adds electric vehicle supply equipment to the definition section 2901 of Title 19. And it has the same meaning that it has in Title 30. It would add on page 31, line 15, a new section 2906 to Title 19 that are the goals of the electric vehicle supply equipment program. And there was a lot of discussion even after I came in about how this should be worded and what the goals should be. So page 31, line 18, that the level 3 charging ports would be available within 3 driving miles of every exit on the Dwight D. Eisenhower National System within the state. And then at the top of page 32, those charging stations would be within 25 driving miles of another level 3 charging port available along a state highway, and would also be co-located with or within a safe and walkable and rollable distance of publicly accessible amenities that are along the state highway system.
Is that term rollable used in other places in statute?
I don't know that, but that was the term that they ultimately hit upon as acceptable to the people who were discussing it.
And does this follow along the federal program that we're participating in?
So what we have found, you'll recall these goals were ones that we had not codified yet. What we found with the federal program is a 1 mile radius from the interstate interchange. But we have been finding that it has been difficult to achieve that. And so we have asked for exceptions for those cases where we can't get it close enough. We found that usually within 3 miles, we can actually cite a location. The 25 miles in between is the same. And then this co-location framework came from the House Transportation Committee.
The federal, don't they have some guidelines about having lights or amenities too? But you can't, I thought that was the issue of like exit 4 and 5 of having it within a mile, because you could do it right there, but there's nothing there.
Right. I'm gonna have to double check with Patrick on that, because I don't remember that coming up as a conversation, but.
I mean, it didn't talk about co-locating or walkable or rollable, but I thought they did say, maybe it was just to the extent feasible for there's facilities.
I mean, that could very well be, and I'm sure like safety elements were a part of it in terms of lighting and that sort of thing.
Are we gonna be looking to upgrade the level 1 and 2 chargers that we have to 3, or are we gonna be looking for new sites?
It will depend. So our very first NEVI funded site that has become operational is in Bradford. And that was an upgrade to a level 3 from an initial investment that had been done through our ACCD program. And so we will, be looking at our entire network and continuing to balance geographic distribution and upgrading the sites where it's appropriate to upgrade. And then there will be new ones as well.
This goal, I guess you'll tell us later about how you feel about this goal.
Oh, the part 3.
Yeah. I just didn't want to have any part of the 1, 2, or 3 conflict with this, what we're trying to meet with the feds.
Yeah.
We're meeting the federal requirements to get the money, but we're not following a state goal.
Right. I think that that this language is broad enough that we should be able to address it. But I will double check with Patrick. He's been following this in his week in, but I do, the piece I want to confirm for you is the federal requirements related to accessibility and safety and those sort of things. So could you get back to me on that?
So this section would also add a new statutory section 2907 that begins on page 32, line 8. And it has 3 reporting requirements regarding EVSE. The first one, which is begins on line 11 in subdivision 1, is very similar to what is currently in session law about filing a report with a map on the state's efforts to meet its federally required EVSE deployment plan. And the second one begins on subdivision 2, line 15, would be reporting on additional efforts to deploy EVSE through any state grant programs. And the third is at the top of page 33, and it's reporting on the current conditions of the EVSE available to the public and deployed through the assistance of state or federal funding. And subsection B, which is on line 8, says that these reports can be combined as a single report. Section 21 repeals that session law that requires the EVSE map report and the existing goals.
On the second, number 2 on page 32, Michelle, is that report, is there it says including, reporting on your grant programs to include increased charging at the workplaces and these other places, which is not part of our goals on electric supply equipment goals. So is there programs that the agency is doing to do charging at these locations?
So I believe the intent of this was related to, in addition to the highway network EVSE reporting that we're required to do, that we also report on what any other state grant programs are doing, which we,
So like ACCD.
yeah, we don't concur with this language because we may or may not have access to their information.
Because the agency, the AOT is not doing EVSE in workplaces, multi-unit dwellings and communities.
Exactly.
Contraction.
And so there may going forward be, so BGS does deployments, which may benefit community areas. I think their deployments are not set up as a grant program, obviously. ACCD has the grant program and perhaps.
Do they still have that operating? Do they still have money?
Yeah, and ANR could have a program in the future. I mean, yet to be seen how that works out.
Okay. Yes.
So this, I'm assuming, came from the House committee, and I guess if this goes forward and I had to present this on the floor, I'd want to know why they're asking for this language, but I guess that's the next conversation we'll be having them into, because this is not from the agency. Okay, because it's unclear to me what the intention of this is, and if it's going to be a problem, because we don't have access to all this data.
Yep, agreed. And the third report is conditions on all charging that's available to the public. This is similar, I assume, in the agency point of view, that it's not, the agency might not have all this data.
Yeah, that is correct. We certainly can report on the infrastructure we have funded, because the vendors that we are under contract that are required to provide us this information, but we would not necessarily be able to verify this for other non-agency elements.
They're required to tell you how often it's unavailable. Yeah. Because of repairs.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent they have the ability to provide that information. Like, I don't know if their systems monitor like on a timestamp when they go down and when they come back.
Okay.
So page 33, section 22, which begins on line 18, would require the agency, together with other agencies, ACCD and agriculture, to prepare a plan on how to fund and maintain the EVSE in the future. And it's just a one-time report that's due next January.
This is section 23, you're talking about?
No, 22, which started at the bottom of page 33 and goes up to.
Plan, okay.
And then section 23, again, it's session law, and it would require the agency in consultation with other entities to develop recommendations on the regulations that should be placed on publicly available EVSE, including both EVSE that's owned and EVSE that's not owned and operated by an electric distribution utility.
So in section 22, to meet that portion, the goals of the comprehensive energy plan, we're talking about the EVSE goals of those other plans. Yeah, talk about that more. I'm not too clear on that.
I believe that's, I didn't write this, but I believe reading it, that would be what would be intended by the language.
I don't know if there is specific, I guess we should go back and look at the CP. I don't remember specific EVSE goals in there, but maybe there is. I mean, there's goals on electric vehicles in general, but in section 23 is a recommendation on if there rules are needed for EVSE.
Yeah, whether regulations need to be placed on publicly available EVSE, both those that are owned and those that are not owned by an electric distribution utility.
Michelle, do you know what Weights and Measures is starting to measure charging stations yet?
My understanding is that they have placed a requirements document on their website. But in terms of actually regulating the industry, communicating with the industry that they're going to be regulated, helping them understand.
Did we say they can start charging $100 fee per year?
We did that last year, yeah. I think there's, I know that the interagency committee, staff committee that is public service, ANR, AOT, AG, BGS, ACCD, it's everybody, except maybe health and education, are had a lot of conversations about the fact that in order to achieve the goals that we are trying to in terms of consumers feeling confident that they can pull up to a station and understand, first of all, know that they're being charged for a kilowatt hour, which is sort of the technical piece of the Agency of Ag Weights and Measures, but also have the price transparency, have, you know, a number they can call if the station is down, just some basic understanding of operations like you would expect at a gas station, that sort of thing. And I think that there has been efforts to help ag understand that there's maybe a little more to it than currently is being done, that probably needs to occur in terms of working with industry to make sure that we can. So I think this arose from some language that was in the H687, I believe it was, the House climate bill that Chair Coffey had worked on, and then was ported into the T-bill. And ag staff did come in and testify. I wasn't there that day. I know that they are interested in further discussing this language. I have a meeting with Steve Collier tomorrow, actually. So I suspect they'll want to provide further testimony on this.
Okay. Who was that? The Weights and Measures?
Steve Collier is the attorney for Agency of Agriculture.
At the Attorney General. They don't have their own counsel.
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. They may not.
Okay. So there's a,
As I think this might garner more discussion, and I don't know how easy or hard this might be to do, it would be useful for me to get an estimate, broad estimate, like Michelle Boomhauer back of the napkin envelope, back of the envelope estimate of how much time from V-Transit would really take and consume of you to generate all these reports, so that we can start to quantify what the cost of people hours and your attention capacity. You have to say like a 5 to 10 hours on something that's already existing versus 100 to 500 hours. We do the math on what a FTE costs us.
Yeah.
So have you done that before, where you estimate the cost to do these reports?
Yeah, I mean, I think typically if we're asked to do a special report, we say you're gonna have to hire a consultant, it's gonna cost X amount of dollars, and these are ongoing reports, and Patrick has been doing them essentially, and so I can certainly, and these are done internally, they're not the other types of reports, so this may come up tomorrow unless we talk more about reports. Yeah, I'm happy to get an estimate on the reporting that's outlined in the T-bill. That's what you're looking for, and what the cost estimate is for staff.
We have you on the agenda to talk about all these reports.
Absolutely.
Okay, agreed with that. I think it takes us to section
24, which is page 35, line 12. There already is a report that's due on January 15th of 2025 from the Public Utility Commission. This would add to that report that it would include reporting of line extension tariffs across all electric distribution utilities.
Why they put that to keep up?
Also,
I do not know why. Do you know why that was put into the T-bill?
The report
It's
on
the-
line extension.
It's the beneficial electrification with the public utility
I could change it.
commission.
That's changed already.
Yeah.
I don't, this was language that was ported in from that climate bill that I just mentioned.
Line extension, service upgrades,
What page are we on? I'm sorry.
35.
Wow.
I
See
mean,
how fast you are without running out
I
around?
know, it's really, I mean, that is something that I guess could be connected to people wanting to get a charger installed at their house.
I think that was the nexus, but,
And people that are off grid that need a line extension. Yeah.
or,
Service upgrades, yes, because then I know that's an issue in some utilities. But
Did they take testimony from the PUC?
yes, I did.
They did. And what, obviously, they had a position on this or no position?
I know that they, sorry, on this one, this was a little outside of our bailiwick.
Yeah.
Near the end of the T-bill testimony, they were waiting to hear back from the PUC, and I can't remember what the outcome of that was, so.
maybe that's something that for our agenda.
I know that there was additional language that the PUC did not want to have included, and they took that out, but I don't know what the additional language was. And then they changed the wording on this a little bit, I think, but
What is a line extension tariff?
It's just the tariffs that the utilities put forward to extend a line to a new customer. Like if they're off grid or somebody's putting a sugar house and they want
And
to
they
have
add a pole, I thought you had to, that's different than adding the line then.
the line or the poles, but there's a tariff, like how much are they gonna charge? Are they allowed to charge customers? Are they allowed to finance it? Are they, all that regulation around who pays and how much?
All right, because I thought when you were building a new house and stuff, you had to pay for the pole and the line extension.
That's regulated with a tariff.
Oh,
Yeah, so that, this would tell you all about that, which isn't really, I'm not sure exactly the connection to transportation.
well, I guess we have to clarify.
I guess, yeah. So that's, we could ask the PUC, Megan, to come in and talk about
Yeah,
section
I'd be very
24.
cautious of anything that somehow has a cost that it would be picked up by other ratepayers for, I don't know, some off-the-grid customer. I'm not sure what the intent is here.
And I wonder what this pursuant to 21 acts and results, number 55, section 33, did
Well, I
you?
think Donna's probably about to tell us.
I did look it up, but I do not recall. I'm sorry, and I didn't write it down. I can let you know. Actually, I can look it up right now if you want.
Pretty similar questions to the previous two sections, which call for 4 or 5 reports.
Oh, my God.
We know you would like those, we did do those.
Well, reports,
talking reports tomorrow, Michelle's gonna do them.
We're gonna talk about more reports. Well, we can pick that up later. 2021. Maybe it was about, it's probably the electric charging tariffs report that we asked the PUC to do.
So that was from 2021. Is it
That's my guess is what it is.
55?
That's the only PUC report that I can think of. Section 25 is an oral update, not a report.
So
I thought we did something, because I thought we, food and ag couldn't do anything until the NIST put forward its standards.
We just talked about that a little bit.
So I thought once that standard, that's what they would use.
Yes,
So do we have to study
we
it?
were gonna ask ag to come, that's about section 23 about the regulation.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is a
I
question.
don't know whether in fact that would just happen as a matter of,
It's kind of a question of like, is there other regulations? Is the recommendation of that?
well, do we have regulations around, ag? Because they have to, validate the accuracy of scales, the accuracy of the gallonage, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if in fact we need to give them special instructions to do something here that they do.
I think we already did, and remember we asked us if they could charge $100 per.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why we're wondering.
Have we plowed this ground before?
Yeah.
But maybe.
So in section 24, the report that it's referring to is PEV electric distribution utility rate design.
Okay.
And
We heard, so they're adding to that.
Yeah.
Okay, we can, and so Megan, we could also ask
When is that?
AAFN, which one?
The distribution.
February 15th, 2025.
Oh, okay.
January.
In the reports, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, January.
Yeah, it's in the first sentence.
Yes.
AAFN,
The next one
as
is
agency of
February
ag, to come talk about section 23,
Why it's even needed.
and what then, and just an update on their regulations and weights and measures of electric vehicle supply equipment. Okay, so that gets us to section of 25.
So section 25 requires the agency consultation with others to develop a web-based guide to mobility services that it may be offering, that it would consider offering. And it requires certain minimum elements that those begin on page 36, line 11, and continue for most of page 37. And it would require the agency to be available to provide an oral presentation of where they are and what the web-based guide might look like by February 15th of 2025.
Would they do that in English?
Well, I don't know. We have the Agency of Transportation representative here. What was your position on this? And
Section 25.
on section 25, and is there a cost here for the completion of a web-based guide? I imagine there's some
So,
workforce or resource requirements here.
yeah, so this would be just a web page update that would
We already have the web page.
We already have the
something
web
updated.
page, we would consolidate this information into one portal. I think the thinking behind this was that any energy committee or planning commission or community organization that was interested in trying to do more in these areas, whether it was get a car share thing going in their town or to initiate other ride sharing activities, volunteer driver activities, whatever, that this would be a place where they could go and learn more about what other communities have done, how much it might cost, what kind of overhead it might creep.
Almost like a clearinghouse.
It's like a bit of a clearinghouse and a sort of best practices section, and
So you support it?
we're fine with this. You know, I think it would be sort of the next stage in evolution of our transportation demand management programs and the work we're doing with the Mobility and Transportation Innovations Grant.
So does this require you to do something that you are planning or would not be thinking you would want to do as a matter of work?
I don't think it had necessarily come up on our radar as a task to do, but I think it's something that would probably be supportive of the work we're doing, and
And it would have utility.
it would have utility, yeah. So I think we're good with this.
Well, now we've
Okay.
finished that one. At a minimum, is there anything else we should add here as a maximum?
We're giving them their own agency.
I mean, oh gosh, they must have spent a lot of time, such as fixed route public transit service, Medicaid transit, details that may impact program design. In other words, what resources already exist?
Yeah,
Is that a fancy way of identifying?
I think.
In other words, don't duplicate, which was a topic of my concern the other day.
Yeah, I think Senator Kitchell, you make a good point. I mean, I think it's also like raises awareness for entities that may or may not understand why they don't have fixed route public transit in their area and how they would or maybe wouldn't be able to go about getting it, what options there are.
I would like to express something about, to me, it's not only what resources exist, but how any new sort of complement and build on those resources. To me, that's one of the big concerns is we see something that's missing, so therefore we're going to create something as opposed to looking at how do we build and complement what already is in place. And so if we could express that sort of in a different way, in other words, other existing programs that might be complementary or whatever, so that we're looking at collective resources in what we're proposing, as opposed to the old IT mentality, gotta have our own. And maybe there's a more elegant way, but you understand sort of what I'm talking about. And I guess that gets into the braiding of existing funding streams and resources. I like that term, braiding. I predate it though. I braided before it was called that.
Or had a name.
Yeah.
So section 26 is the expansion of the
MTI program.
but you want to talk more about section 5 now.
But four, for each possible program type or option pursuant of one,
Just the definition.
Yeah. This is going to be on your webpage, the range of startup, et cetera, service. Could you, to me, I'm not sure how you would do that on a webpage. To me, that's part of the analysis that would go into any proposal.
I think, Senator, that this would be just providing a broad brush range, and maybe a couple of examples. Like, for instance, when we did the service extension on Route 15 between Essex and Jeffersonville for that commuter service, we could provide an example of, it costs, I'm making up a number, $175,000 a year, and the community had to pay, maybe not, I don't know, but I think that we did have to contribute in some way, but just to help these entities understand that each of these types of programs comes with a cost, because we frequently get, this, I think this comes up a lot with public transit fixed route service, like, why should my town pay $500 a year for that service since I'm not getting any transit? and they may not understand that they're getting Medicaid transportation services and job access and all of that. So we can, you know, while we're doing this, we can help people understand, like, this is what everybody is already getting, and here's where you call to get this service. It's available to your community. Here's some other services like demand response, ride, microtransit that are being developed around the state. And here's sort of the cost framework for those and how that's being paid for currently and what the trade-offs are. Like, you're not gonna have a fixed route if you're gonna have a microtransit like happened here in Montpelier. So I would say this is very high level, and if anybody wants to really take a deeper dive, and then they could apply for an MTI grant to do a planning study to see if it's really feasible in their area to start a microtransit or to work with Car Share Vermont to get a car sharing thing going or whatever. I think that was the gist of this.
And who would be doing this?
Us, our staff,
No, but who's the beneficiary of all of this work?
communities, I think, essentially nonprofits and
The reason I'm looking, if it were towns, this is something that you would really want to do in partnership with your local, with regional planning. That's really what I'm
Yeah.
thinking about, which is a resource to towns. And
absolutely.
so,
I think the direction on sort of the next steps for communities who are looking at these options or nonprofits looking at these options would be to contact your regional planning commission or contact whoever, you know, we would give a contact point. And we would also like work with the regional planning commissions as we develop this resource webpage that sort of provides any input they might have, I think would be helpful.
it just seems like it's important to kind of put this in that broader context of the region and, and if you're really looking at municipalities and that if they're interested, I don't know, it just seems like there's a nexus there, but obviously if it's a nonprofit, I'd be very concerned about more nonprofits wanting to get into the transportation business.
It would be
But I guess I've made my views known on that, haven't I?
Okay, section 26.
Section 26, which begins on page 37, but is mostly on page 38, is concerns the MTI grant program that you created in 2020 session law. And at the top of page 38, you see it says it shall continue to support projects that improve both mobility and access services for transit-dependent Vermonters, reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But it shall also be expanded in two ways, and one is subdivision 1, which begins on line 6 of page 38, that the grant awards would be made available for both capital and operational costs that expand newer existing programs and result in greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And the second way it would be expanded would be on page 38, line 10, subdivision 2, that the application period would be expanded, would be opening in May of each year and continuing through August.
Did this make this section 2 make sense to the agency to be so prescriptive on when program starts? And
we were agnostic on that. We were happy to open the application period earlier, and we already provide technical assistance.
this would, you would have to open it in May and then they'd be due in September, but you'd provide.
If anybody calls and wants to help with their application, we will help them during that time.
This brings up what we had to do with the language change for the retirement, you know, everybody saves or something at the treasurers, and we had a prescriptive time, and we actually had to modify it to allow them to set the program up earlier because it was so prescriptive in statute. And your question or looking at that makes me wonder if in fact we are overly prescriptive.
Right.
Yeah, this is currently not in statute. The time frame is currently not in statute.
Well, maybe there's
Just
language
with a time of an application period prescribed by the agency or something,
or of at least so many months.
or something.
Do you want to propose language?
Well, I think if we count up the number of months here, it's about 4 months before the application deadline or something like that.
But then if you wanted to do April to August or something, you're not just like, oh, it has to be May.
Yeah.
An application period, then, a 4-month application period.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
You said this is new language. Do the current MTI grants allow for both capital and operational costs, or are they restricted to just capital?
They allow for both,
Okay.
and the thing here is, the program is not codified in statute and has one been codified in statute.
Doesn't make a change. That one doesn't really change to the program, it just.
Well, my
But this is
question,
not codifying it, this is still session law.
Oh, this is still session law?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I do have a
So-
question though, on one,
Sorry.
It's okay, I just don't know what the difference is then.
the, one, up above, you have that improve both mobility and access for public service, reduce the use, and reduce greenhouse. So, other words, they have to, provide mobility access, reduce the use of single, and reduce greenhouse gases. That's in above. And then in one, we say result in greenhouse gas emissions. Why are we, it seems like what above is not or, it's, you have to meet all three because it's and. And then in one, we're only talking about greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm just raising that as sort of a question about the language there.
Yeah, and Donna, can you verify whether one is in somewhere else already in session law?
I will check that.
Maybe we don't have it,
So,
when we created the program,
yeah,
our language should.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a lot of detail in the session law, was there?
I think that, there was not a lot of detail, and it was, the agency shall create a, mobility innovation, or not even, I don't even think innovations was in the word, I think it was a micro, and I think it said micro transit
Innovations grant program.
And then we ended up, you know, it wasn't M, a capital M, so we ended up calling it Mobility and Innovations Grant Program. MTIP, Mobility and Transportation Innovations Grant Program, because it was expansive beyond just microtransit, or it is. And so I think there were two things that are happening here. One is to officially name the program now in statute, and two was to provide a bit more structure around the objectives.
That this doesn't put it in
I
statute.
mean, not statute, in statute.
I just pulled up the 2020 language. Are you interested in an overview of it, or? It says it shall establish and administer a transportation demand management and micro transit innovations grant program, all lowercase, so it's not supposed to be the name, but that's what it's supposed to do, within the public transit program to incentivize and continue support for the advancement of transportation demand management programs and new transit initiatives. And then it says it's going to, the agency is required to distribute 500,000 in grant awards, with each recipient only eligible to receive up to 100,000. They can be used, the grant awards can be used for one or more of the following: as matching funds for other grant awards, for program delivery costs, or for the extension of existing programs. And the final thing is that they shall be distributed not later than November 30th, and shall, and then this is a quote, incentivize innovative strategies that improve both mobility and access for transit-dependent Vermonters, reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles for work trips, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that phrase that you were looking at,
Yeah.
Senator Kitchell, is sort of
Requires
a,
all three.
yeah, and it's sort of, it doesn't use all of the words, but very many of the same words.
With that, since that language isn't struck out here, they would both still be in existence. that language.
Yes, this would be adding to, and both of them are session law. So
They're
they're,
sort of similar.
right, well, it's saying, I mean, it's sort of like, giving you the shorthand version of what the 2020 law did on the top of page 38. And then seems to be giving a little more detail in what the grant awards would be in that subdivision 1, because there isn't a lot of
You give
detail
a
here.
look to make sure that we're not confusing, if we're having two different descriptions of the program. Like, we're not striking that out of language and going with an update. Trying to make sure that we're saying we're now calling it the MTI grant program,
That's what it's been being called.
but that other language is still in existence because we're not striking it.
Right. So this is supposedly adding more detail or adding to it. Yeah.
I just didn't know if we needed to strike that other language about
Yeah.
what it was called.
It might be nice to have it all in one location
Yeah.
rather than striking it, but have, there is created a, you know,
I
that,
think
how
that'd
that
be a lot better, because it seems like we're repeating some of the,
right. And you have to go to several different places in the white books to be able to find it.
Yeah, it would be good to put it all in one.
Okay, so combine the two.
or 3, whatever. How many are out there loitering?
It's like 26 combined.
But the intent was to be all 3, that you had to, I mean, it could mean that you
Does it
actually,
mean each grant has to do all 3, or just the program has to? I think of it as the program has to do
to
all 3.
support projects that improve both mobility, it's, to me, I read it that the projects improve all of the 3.
Which I guess is pretty easy.
I don't know, it could very well be that as you provide more access for transit dependent, you increase the gas emissions if you have more trips.
Right,
Maybe.
unless you're doing, electric vehicles.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I don't know, maybe. Anybody skillful writing a grant can figure that one out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, I was jumping the gun for section 27.
But I'm good. I think we're done.
Yeah, we're gonna try to rewrite it and put everything in one place.
Do you want to put it in statute as well, so it's easier to find it, or?
I don't have a opinion of it. I don't know if you have a recommendation whether we want it in statute or not.
Well, if we intend to continue it, it belongs in statute.
Okay with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's become kind of a core program that
Yeah.
has been beneficial, and I think with the changes in how we're delivering transportation services, I think we will continue to see a reliance on this program.
Michelle, is there someone at the agency I should speak to if I have questions like this?
Yeah, absolutely, Ross McDonald, and you can certainly email me.
Okay, great, thank you.
And we will modify the applicant to be 4 months and not be quite so prescriptive then.
Right, section 2.
So you provide entities technical assistance. Are we gonna put anything, well, no, we won't do to. I wanna put in less, not more.
Okay, section 27, development of new Vermont rail plan, bicycle storage.
Right, so there is already a, I guess, requirement to develop a new Vermont rail plan, and at the top of page 39, there's some additions to what the agency is supposed to consider. One is adding additional daily service on the Vermonter for Summerall service area. Another is expanding the service on the Valley Flyer to provide increased service on the Vermonter route.
What's the Vermont Flyer?
Valley Flyer,
Excuse me, Valley Flyer.
what is Valley Flyer?
So the Valley Flyer is the service in Massachusetts that goes so far up to Greenfield, Mass. And then there are folks who wish to go to Brattleboro and maybe beyond.
But that's an Amtrak named route.
It's an Amtrak name route. It's a state-supported route that's paid for by Massachusetts. And
It goes just, where does it start? Does it start in Connecticut, or is it just?
I feel like it's just in Massachusetts, but I could be wrong. I feel like it's just in Massachusetts.
From where to where? Like down the Connecticut border, yeah.
This
Okay.
So we could be adding potential, I mean, all these railroads are subsidized, right? I don't believe any of them
Absolutely.
produce sufficient revenues,
Oh, God,
no, right? So we could,
This is the study and consider adding.
I know, but I think what's missing here is what is the cost? And I'm really worried, you know, like we had that report, wouldn't it be nice to have commuter rail from St. Albans to Montpelier? And so we had the agency do a report. And the report cost over $100,000. We had a consultant do it, and it told us essentially it wasn't financially feasible. So I think here, this is wonderful examination, you know, navel gazing. But the question is, if you're gonna look at it, I don't see, shall consider, you've got to have the cost.
That was similar to my concern. I feel like Donna might have addressed it though when you started the introduction saying that they are already doing the plan and this is just adding additional considerations.
So I can clarify this. First of all, I would like to make a correction. The Valley Flyer starts in New Haven, Connecticut, and goes to Greenfield. So it's a two-state service right now.
We've got a fairly good population base there too.
Yeah.
And I'd take it over 95 any day.
And when we do our rail plan, this is sort of the long-range plan of what's gonna happen in the next 25, 30 years. All this is asking that is when we do that plan, make sure that we include a summary analysis of additional daily service of the Vermonter, which would give us, you know, what it would cost to do that. We're not talking about the kind of study you were mentioning. And also, you know, what are some of the logistics around the Valley Flyer in terms of, you know, condition of tracks, coordinating with the other two states, you know.
So you're
what
saying the
cost
cost
would be.
benefit then, and that fiscal
Yeah.
analysis would be done, it's inherent in doing the plan?
A very high level analysis of the Valley Flyer piece as a potential sort of future activity that would be prioritized in the state rail plan. So right now,
Consider and address it. By addressing it, you could say this is gonna cost X dollars, or we have to do these steps.
I see this as like a 1 to 2 page element in a 300 page.
So we don't need to put in anything about the cost benefit because you're saying that's inherent in the
It's
plan
inherent
itself.
Yeah, and like I said, it would be very high level, because until like, for instance, today's headline in WCAX, maybe I think it was, you know, Vermont to expand train service to Bennington. And if you haven't seen the article, check it out. We received $1 million grant award from Amtrak to do corridor ID planning. And basically in the future, any service that Amtrak is going to invest in has to have completed this corridor ID process. And the routes that we are analyzing in our corridor ID process are expansion of the Ethan Allen route from Rutland to Bennington, which has been in our long-term plan for a long time. And then Bennington to Albany, and then also service to Montreal. So those are the only two things that are like right now highlighted in our long-range plan. And so to make mention of the Valley, to at least like analyze at a very, very high level, not with any amount of big fiscal investment in the rail plan. And then it would be like up to, you know, the creation of the policy. Will the Valley Flyer be like somewhere down the list,
Right.
you know, beyond like multi-days or, you know, multiple service on the Amtrak Vermonter and other things that are ahead of that particular priority. So
We could call it the Valley Flyer since we already have an Amtrak route
It goes through our.
that goes through, right? From New Haven on up through.
well, yeah, this would be additional service in addition to the Vermonter service. So this would run at different times.
I understand that.
And then when the route analysis you're doing with Amtrak, the grant,
Yes.
Bennington, would the Ethan Allen still cut over from Rutland and take the New York route, or would it be two routes, or would it, instead of taking that New York route, it would go the Bennington way?
It would go the Bennington way in all likelihood.
Because there's no stops, I assume, between Albany and Rutland now, and New York.
Well, there's one stop, Castleton.
Aren't we
But there's no
upgrading
roads.
something on that line?
Bunch of bridges.
We had made improvements on that line because what's talked about in today's article about getting to Bennington, that's decades
Yeah.
away. So we still have to make sure that we have the improvements on the existing line,
For passenger.
passenger rail.
We put all the bridges that the 256 did for
Well,
cars.
right now, we're in the middle of doing the bridges we had done the bridges, on the, Hoosick line, and now we're doing the bridges on the, line that would be between Rutland and Bennington.
Okay, so we haven't done.
We haven't done those yet, so that's like a very, we just actually, the appropriations bill that passed Congress, on Friday included the additional money we needed, because that project started before the inflationary trend occurred, and so we were short about 13 million.
So we're putting welded rail on that, if we.
That'll be the next stage, we'll have continuously welded rail after all these bridges have been, brought up to 286.
Okay.
So we're taking up language to tell you to consult about bicycle capacity.
That's what it says.
Couldn't we just write you a letter?
That would work too.
I mean, this language, I don't know, it seems like everybody's, huh? What?
You just have to consult with the Amtrak. They don't have to write a report. They heard.
Have you consulted with Amtrak on bicycle?
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear on the bike capacity is, which we shared, but we
Still
were
have to,
asked to also include the States for Passenger Rail Committee, and, and have a further,
who's on the state Amtrak Intercity Passenger Rail Committee?
so those are all
Never
these
heard of it.
state-supported, railroads, so we have a seat at that committee because we have a state-supported railroad, I don't know, there's probably about,
Is it a regional entity?
no, it's a
National?
national entity, and there's about 15 states, I want to say, that have state-supported railroad. And so they have this association essentially that, or committee that coordinates with Amtrak, on things like cost allocations and service improvements and sort of.
So you're already doing it, but this would have you do something more?
I think this is really looking at, how are we calculating bike storage needs? Are we addressing the, kind of, it's the seasonal intermittency of the need for bike storage? I think probably somebody wanted to bring a bike and couldn't, I don't know.
Okay, well, we can talk about it more. We're just going through it here. What did you have a question?
Yeah, so I think you answered most of it, but since this seems to be just making sure that you include these additional considerations of the plan.
Mhm.
And you mentioned Montreal, so that's part of the plan. And then the Winooski connector, if the McNeil plant does stop burning wood, I feel like the calculus, the economic calculus will change. And that's part of the plan. We don't need to include it in here.
It's already in the plan,
Okay.
yeah, I think that is like maybe the third priority after
Great.
Montreal and Bennington. Is that.
Okay. So section 28, replacement for the Vermont State Design Standard.
May I ask, this never says what the design standards are for, so I don't know if all of you know what the Vermont state design standards are that are being replaced, and might be helpful. Michelle, can you tell us what this means?
For everything.
So these are pretty much for everything, but it's most principally related to the highway network and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So it's kind of the engineering standards that are used to make sure that, a B38 truck can make a certain turn and has the appropriate turn radius, in terms of the capacity of the highway that's needed to make that turn. I don't know, I just made that up mostly. I don't know if there's B38 trucks or not.
I have to say, I'm having just a reaction to this. Consult directly through a series of large groups, especially focus groups, and one-on-one meetings with key stakeholders. I mean, this update is something that we have to do periodically. Are
We
we?
asked you to do it last year.
So we haven't done this update in about 15 years.
No, we talked about it last
We
year.
talked about it every year since I've been here, I think. And it's been in statute a number of times, and we gave an update on where we are. We have a consultant in place. We have a scope of work. The scope of work outlines all these things that are in here, because there was a desire to put in statute what we are already going to do. And so we provided this language, because
This is your
our-
language?
No. We were asked to provide an outreach plan. And I think, or maybe somebody had come up with an initial outreach plan, and our outreach plan in our scope of work was more detailed than what had been suggested. And so I said, why don't we just go with what we're already doing? If you want to put this in statute, or in session law. And so this is what we gave.
In the January 26th deadline for having the new design standards, that's that consistent with
The
our.
draft, yeah.
You have another 2 years to finish it.
Yeah.
So that's because we're doing a lot of public outreach,
One would think that that was the only reason, but no, there's a lot to it, yeah, right.
because there's a lot of standards to
Yeah.
update all.
It's a comprehensive.
Well, we can talk about the details later on that. So section 29,
Section 29 is, these are the houses falling complete streets. I don't know if that's something that you all have talked about a lot as well, although it is in session. So page 42, it has an expanded concept of what the complete street principles include, by including the language at the bottom of page 42, line 14, and that the principles include that when desired by the municipality, it implements street design for the purposes of calming and slowing traffic in state designated centers, and support the land uses that develop and evolve in tandem with transit and accessibility. And then that same general concept is included again, I think, later on, but this also in the same section, 29 would make amendments to section 2403 as well. And
this is 2402 state policy, the complete streets policy, or is this something different when people, this isn't the complete streets policy. This is
You're on page 43, or where are you?
on page 41.
Oh, 41.
bottom of page 41, the state policy is concerning complete streets, I believe.
Would you call that, Michelle, the complete street policy? Or 2402? Okay.
So what we're adding is 4, their
Correct.
current, policy.
But it's still as applicable. That still pertains to everything. This is B. So that still pertains to 4 as well.
What does
Right,
4,
correct. As
why is 4 I'm having a hard time, when desired by the municipality, I mean,
Gives the municipality more influence, I would say, on the project, or at least they can say, hey, we want, if it's applicable, if the agency would agree that it's applicable, then they would.
but we're talking about municipal projects that are funded, designed, by the Agency of Transportation.
Yeah,
So that's what I'm trying to understand here, is the state policy relates to the AOT funded design or funded and designed projects. And, so,
If I may, I had a specific issue in Shelburne where I think I'm wondering if this would intersect. So Route 7, Shelburne Road, going through Shelburne, there's this new community center with Champlain Housing built it. So there's this large complex of high density housing, which is great. Right across the street, there's a recreation center, there's a bank, and then down the street is a convenience store. Lots of pedestrians going back and forth. Town really wanted one of those flashing walking signs. The Trans did not. And so we had to go back and forth, and ultimately we pressed the case, and they are gonna put it in. So would this just give more deference to the municipality saying we want that? Is that what this language would do, is just make V-Trans have to give more credit or consideration to what the local town manager and select board want?
As
So,
long as it's around calming, slowing, and I would say yes.
and it's,
But the agency could still say, oh, that's not really happening.
that's what I'm wondering.
So this is an attempt to put in policy that they need, that V-Trans needs to, more than they already do, listen to the towns when it comes to calming and pedestrian safety.
So I guess I would say that this makes more explicit the process we already use. And there are typically mitigating circumstances relative to, a number of factors, safety, speed, mobility, that we also have to take into consideration along with, the pedestrian amenities that a community might be interested in. And one of the ways that communities who feel they are not getting the desired outcomes, one of the avenues they can take is to take over the highway as a class 1 town highway through their center. And then they do the maintenance. We come in every 10, 15 years and do the major whatever needs to happen. And that way
They would do the plowing.
they do the plowing, they can have bulb outs, they can have sort of the more
The traffic.
comprehensive features that they might want to engender their area.
The pedestrian signs.
And I think Shelburne actually is now maybe considering doing class 1.
So number 4 is when the municipalities, but we're still talking about ALT funded and design projects.
We'd still have to, there still have to be sort of the case made like you stated earlier, which is,
If it's
it's
not,
not gonna happen automatically.
no,
I don't think this policy takes that.
Yes, these are for all EOT projects.
Right.
When the EOT project goes through the municipality can say, we desire more calming and traffic slowing design.
plant more shrubs and trees that die or don't get maintained. I hate to say, Act 250 required for the Route 2 improvement up around Marshfield Dam plantings. And people said, that's not gonna work, and in fact, it doesn't. I know in order to meet that requirement, a lot of money was spent, and there are medians, dividers between the highway and where you have pull-offs, and they can't survive. So what was a requirement, in fact, ended up just a use of funding that.
Let's see if we can,
So that's,
maybe can we tackle, before we end, 10 minutes, can we talk about just the next 2 sections? So this section also has a part about projects not incorporating Complete Street principles.
Correct, 2403 says that if there are projects that the project manager determines would be disproportionately costly to include the Complete Street principles, they have to have a written determination of this and include a lot of information. And this is saying that if it, as to those elements that are the ones that the municipality required or desired, doesn't need to include that same level of information about why that's not being included.
Okay.
you got that, Andy?
I think we can talk about it more later.
Did you address, is this your drafting, Donna, or?
I drafted very, very little and heard almost no testimony, so I'm making this up as I go along.
I'm not even gonna. Me too.
Okay. Let's go to section 30.
Section 30 is a analysis and report on transportation emissions reductions. subsection A, which is all of 45 and all of 46 and on to 47 are findings. Subsection B requires the Agency for Transportation and Natural Resources in consultation with others to prepare a written analysis of policy and investment scenarios to reduce transportation-related emissions and meet state greenhouse gas reduction standards. Subsection C, which is on page 48 of the first half of page 48. This is the minimum requirements in that analysis. Subsection D, which I'm going quickly because I'm
Sure.
guessing you wanna, okay. Subsection D requires that written analysis is going to include an estimate of the amount of emissions reduction from a minimum of 4 scenarios and a summary of how each analyzed proposal would be administered. Subsection E, which is the bottom of page 48, requires the state treasurer to review the written analysis and make written recommendations to the General Assembly. Subsection F, this is top of page 49, requires a publicly accessible website regarding development of this analysis and filing of status updates at certain times. Subsection G, which is at the top of page 50, would require the agencies to retain a consultant to work on this. Subsection 8 would enable funds received under the EPA's climate pollution reduction grant to pay for that consultant. Section 31, which begins at the bottom of page 51, codifies as a new section in Title 19 what is currently in, actually isn't even in session law, it's just a program that kind of exists, the Better Connections Grant Program, which is an existing program that provides planning grants to municipalities to coordinate municipal land use decisions and with the transportation
Is the one
investments.
done no with ACCD?
And Ann Arbor.
And then the final is a transportation funding study that would require the agency to hire a consultant who is an expert in transportation finance and funding to think of various ways that funding could be achieved in a
Including the MBUF. $100,000, no more than $100,000 to contract.
And they did ask the agency if they would require additional funding for this, and I believe the agency said that they usually put aside some funding because they assume that there is going to be a request for consultants. So.
Okay.
I think,
And with a bang with the last two.
I think we should do an interim add-on to their registration. By the time we get to MBUF, I'm gonna be probably, seriously, I think we really should.
The electric charge.
Yeah.
$1 million this year, go up to 3 million next 5 years, and we can cancel it and put in the MBUF.
Yeah, as a transition to MBUF.
You could sunset it too, so we could sunset it, last for 3 years. People love sunsets around here.
Yeah, we could sunset when an MBUF is put in place and implemented.
We could do an MBUF sunrise report.
I think so. I think we could. I think there are all kinds of potential. No, I'm serious about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
we can
think the
study
committee
until
is.
the cows come home. The world is changing very quickly. We could do something quite simple, an add-on. I guess we could figure out how to do a 6-month, but twice a year to minimize the out-of-pocket burden for lower income households. And I think we could be talking about, some money coming in. And I can't imagine, I suppose the governor would say he wants to support freeloaders, as Senator McDonald calls them. But I would think that
Your
most,
campaign for it.
I support, our transportation. So I think we really ought to think seriously about moving forward to implement something as a transition.
So,
And I know that's probably gonna give you heartburn, but, you're retiring, so.
I'll let folks know.
So yeah, Michelle, could you work with Megan to have either you or somebody to come in to say what the agency's position would be on electric vehicle charging registration fee?
Can you?
As part of a long-term plan to, strengthen the, transportation, funding for the state's transportation
There's a
infrastructure.
transition to.
May I just ask you about how you will go about this? Will you ultimately?
Once we get past our molding here.
Well, I just don't know. I mean, I'm only here for this week and 2 more weeks. So I'm gonna try to do as much as possible in advance to help whoever's gonna fill in. So
And they think another person will be.
I think that people are gonna try to,
Existing.
people are gonna try to fill in as they have time. I
So
don't
you're
know.
basically saying we got 2 weeks to figure out most.
Well, 2.5 weeks, grab this week too. But what I wanna know is when you do this, will you do this as a strike all, or do you go in and just change sections typically?
Usually it's
A strike off?
There's so many changes, it'd be kind of.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing is that do you like to do pieces of this is how we're changing this one, and I'll mark it out with what your changes are, or?
We'll go through,
what-
usually we go through and then say like, when we agree, then we close it out, and then we won't talk about it again. But if
Okay.
we're gonna change it, then we, do section by section on
Okay, on separate
the
pieces.
changes, whether it's just striking it out or how
Okay.
we change it.
Okay, great, I can like start setting up some.
But like some committees go through every section, and we just say, no, okay, close it out. And then so it's like peeling an onion, and then we get down to those that.
Okay. Just so you know, Ways and Means is taking this up at 2:30 today, and they're gonna go through JFO's fiscal analysis and there are a couple.
Fees, there's a couple of fees
Yeah.
regarding section the 1111 fees,
Oh,
and then the report at the end is going Ways and Means, so just gonna touch on those 2 things briefly.
Well, the 100,000 will probably have to go to appropriations anyway.
Right, yeah.
Right, yeah, appropriations hasn't scheduled anything the last time I looked, but Ways and Means even had vote out for today, so I think it'll be out.
Did last year, Ways and Means at the last minute tack on a bunch of fees, or so are we
No,
expecting?
we did it.
No, Ways and Means did, and then we pulled it out.
I put it in the budget. Turn it off. Yes. I've got to leave, so.
We can adjourn.